More about an American Airlines flight forced to abort landing at a Reagan National Airport to avoid colliding with another plane.
Have a scare on a Delta flight. Smoke filled the cabin, forcing the plane to turn around and make an emergency landing.
Got smoke in the cabin and need to plan a return back.
A Delta flight from Los Angeles International Airport headed to Sydney, Australia on Saturday was forced to make an emergency landing after smoke was detected on board.
A crash landing of a Delta connection flight with 80 people on board. This is stunning pictures here tonight showing that plane flipped upside down.
Investigators tonight from the FAA heading to the scene of that small plane crash in Vermont.
Good day, good people. Happy Friday, and thank you for stopping by another edition of the Independent Mail. If you're subscribed, please do me a favor, be like LL. And if you've been with me this week, you know that this week I have been covering Mr. Elon Musk and all things Doge. From Trump supporters being surprised that they've been collateral damage and been fired, all the way to trying to figure out if 100 and 150-year-olds were receiving Social Security benefits. We've been covering the Department of Government Efficiency. Now, while it is a bit too early to see the overall benefits that us, the American people, are getting from these firings and some of these audits, it is not too early to see one thing that has happened from these firings, and that is the public sentiment towards air travel. Currently, some Americans are being a little bit more leery about choosing air travel as their mode of transportation. Why is this important? Well, this is important for two reasons. Number one, if this goes on long term, it could mean a dip in business slash sales for the airline industry overall. But number two, perception is reality. And this could end up being politically a problem for both DOGE and President Trump. Why am I saying this? Because if we rewind back to summer and fall leading up to this election, the perception was that the economy was bad and that we had not recovered from inflation quickly enough. And as a matter of fact, Kamala Harris had to carry Joe Biden's inflationary economy. So at that point, they thought milk and eggs were too high. That was the public sentiment. That was the public perception. So regardless of what the actual data said, if you dug in to see that, oh, the US actually outperformed the rest of the world in digging out of a global inflation, that was not how the people felt. So even though statistically, the professionals will say that the airline industry isn't any more or less safe now than it was a year ago or 2 years ago.
The International Air Transport Association says, statistically speaking, though, you would have to fly every day for more than 100,000 years before you would ever experience a fatal accident in an airplane. Of course, that number is kind of hard to wrap around with all the things that have happened recently, but Paul Jackson is a retired commercial airline pilot with thousands of hours in the cockpit.
This is a terrible month. This is probably the worst month in 20, 30 years. You have precious cargo, and you have to take your job seriously and be a professional.
Now, if you are hesitant about booking your next trip, remember thousands of flights operate safely every single day.
There has been a compacted amount of things that happened in a short period of time, meaning January and February, that has given the public the perception that flying is not as safe as it was. You throw in all of the DEI battles, which definitely came in before inauguration time, but definitely came into effect in January when the first major accident happened, in which a military helicopter was involved in a mid-air collision. All we had to do was find a female and a minority somewhere, and all of a sudden, this was a DEI issue. So you have that going on with these mass firings, and then you have a lot of incidents happening, and now people are starting to wonder, is it a coincidence or is it causational?
This makes me feel even more uncomfortable and unsafe about flying.
That guy's not alone. American travelers are expressing more hesitancy when it comes to flying. There have been 4 major plane crashes over the past month, from Washington, D.C. to Alaska, Philadelphia, and Monday's crash in Toronto.
Now, actual passengers are not the only ones sounding an alarm about being a little bit more cautious when it comes to air travel. Actual former FAA professionals have been saying the same thing. Let's check out this article right here. President plane accident. FAA worker renames Trump as laid off staff, warns of danger. Workers at the Federal Aviation Administration sounded the alarm this week after President Trump and Elon Musk oversaw firings of around 400 employees. The Associated Press reported that FAA began notifying employees last Friday they were being fired. One air traffic controller said the move included FAA radar landing and navigational aid maintenance. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy insisted 0 air traffic controllers and critical safety personnel were being let go. However, one FAA employee suggests to the Rolling Stone that Duffy was wrong. There are currently 4 people remaining over there to do the work of 15 people, the employee said about an obstacle impact team. This is based in Oklahoma and did work critical to preparing for emergencies. The danger to the national airspace cannot be understated. This is a very real threat to the American flying public. Elon Musk also said that firings had no impact on safety. He is wrong, the employee insisted. How do they think airports and airplanes work? Another FAA official reportedly said. The Transportation Department told Rolling Stone that Trump could be remembered as President Plane Accident. Now, like I said, according to the professionals and the officials, air traffic safety is no less today than it was last year, a year before that, previous years. However, he did acknowledge that there is a compact time period of instances that, of course, is affecting our perception. We are perceiving that it is ridiculously unsafe. Why are we perceiving it as such? Because literally in the past 45 days, there have either been actual crashes with collisions with planes, near misses, crazy landings, or just straight up ridiculous maintenance issues with like smoke filling up entire cabins in mid-flight on more than one occasion. It's going to seem like it's the same thing over and over again, but these are all different. And I didn't even include them all that I had in there because I got tired of chopping them up and putting them all together. But let's not take my word for it. Let's just look at a few of these that's happened over the last 4 or 5 days. 45 in case I didn't enunciate well enough. Not 45.
And we're learning more about an American Airlines flight forced to abort landing at a Reagan National Airport to avoid colliding with another plane. Fox 5's Homa Bash joining us now with why experts don't seem to be all that concerned. Hi, Homa.
Hey, Marina. Pilots tell us while it is making headlines following the mid-air collision at Reagan National Airport and other recent plane incidents, what happened at DCA is actually a standard move. And this one was done flawlessly with the plane landing safely soon after. American Airlines flight 2246 from Boston Logan to DCA was coming into land around 8:20 Tuesday morning. That's when air traffic controllers told the pilots to go back up into the air to allow another aircraft more time for takeoff. It landed about 11 minutes later, again safely. Both American Airlines and the FAA telling Fox 5 the maneuver, which is called a go-around, is not abnormal. In fact, FAA data shows Reagan National has the highest number of go-arounds of all airports in the U.S. About 0.8% of all arrivals employ this technique.
Okay, so this one right here was reported as a near miss, but it is actually a procedure that happens, as you can see, so much percentage of the time, especially at Reagan Airport, but it's called a go-around. Now, this next clip is when that procedure is not done, meaning that someone doesn't notice the air traffic that's going on as far as a plane taking off and landing at the same time, like they did this on this go around. This didn't happen in this instance, which was like last week. Let's check it out. All right, now let's go to the smoke. Just took off, doing your flight thing, reading a book, watching a movie, checking on the kids or whatever, and cabin's filling up with smoke. Yeah, that's going on a lot now too. Don't know why.
Have a scare on a Delta flight. Smoke filled the cabin, forcing the plane to turn around and make an emergency landing. This morning, we're hearing from some of the passengers. Transportation correspondent Gio Benitez is here with that story for us. Good morning, Gio.
Hey, Robin, good morning. As you can imagine, this was very scary for a lot of passengers, some of them covering their faces, evacuating the plane through those slides, even ending up on the wing. This morning, we're hearing from passengers on that Delta flight from Atlanta to Columbia, South Carolina, where smoke filled the cabin mid-flight.
Returning to the airport.
Over the weekend, another Delta plane was forced to land at LAX because of smoke in the cabin. As for this latest incident, Delta saying the flight crew followed procedures. And the FAA is now trying to figure out where that smoke came from. We've looked at the data and we see that it happens about 1,500 times a year for various reasons from an engine issue to a bird strike, sometimes an oven issue in the galley, or even a passenger cell phone or external battery. But no matter the reason, it's scary.
Every day it seems like something right now.
I know, it is.
And then we have some more smoke. This was not Atlanta to somewhere in South Carolina. This was LAX, an LA flight to somewhere else. Also Delta, but also smoked out.
A Delta flight from Los Angeles International Airport headed to Sydney, Australia on Saturday was forced to make an emergency landing after smoke was detected on board. According to data from FlightAware, the aircraft took off just after 9 o'clock or so, returned to LAX 30 minutes later. When the plane returned to the gate, no smoke was in the cockpit, but according to liveatc.net, pilots still requested medical attention for passengers who may have been affected by the smoke. All 162 people on board were then rebooked on a different flight.
And then when we weren't smoking out or having near misses, we were just straight up like boom, boom on the runway with landings. There have been a couple of like severely hard landings. This one coming up, I think, was actually weather related, but let's check it out.
Got some more breaking news this evening. A crash landing of a Delta connection flight with 80 people on board. This is stunning pictures here tonight showing that plane flipped upside down. This is at the Toronto Pearson International Airport in Canada.
We're told tonight more than a dozen people were injured. NBC5 investigator Chuck Gowdy working the story for us. He joins us now in studio tonight with much more. Chuck.
Allison, this is the latest in a flurry of aviation accidents, the fourth in North America in a month. Canadian and U.S. air safety investigators converging now on Toronto's Pearson Airport, finding a Delta commuter jet flipped on its topside. And considering the looks of the airfield crash, it may be surprising there are no current deaths reported. There are several serious injuries and more than a few serious questions this afternoon. The plane was coming from Minneapolis with 80 passengers and crew when it landed and came to a rest upside down. The CRJ 900 plane made by Bombardier was operated by Delta Airlines commuter subsidiary Endeavor. The region had just come out of a winter storm, but as this photo from the morning shows, things had brightened, and the video from the airport earlier today shows conditions appearing to be okay, although there were wind gusts of up to 40 miles an hour reported. Weather will be a factor investigators will be checking, along with a full review of air traffic control staffing and operations. Canada has been facing similar tower shortages as in the U.S., and so the midday controller assignments will be evaluated as well by investigators.
So, are all these accidents coincidence, or is this causational from all of the mass FAA firings? I think only time's going to tell. The DOGE department, the Trump administration, a lot on the right, have done an excellent job of vilifying diversity. They've taken positions like this, which of course, jobs, education, things of that nature, they're resources. And what they've done is they've tried to rewrite these resources as to only being able to be held by a certain demographic of individuals, i.e. anytime that they can link a minority or a woman to one of these positions and there's a mistake made, all of a sudden no one of color and no one of the female gender is qualified. The administration has successfully made it appear that only a certain demographic is qualified and capable of holding these positions. The same demographic that was in charge of the Hindenburg and the Titanic, they're going to have to wear the results of the perception. All right. But that's all I have on this today. I don't have an answer whether this is just coincidental or it's causational because there's not enough data yet. But like I said, what I do know is perception is reality. And what it is perceived is that air travel is not as safe with Con Air. Until next time, peace and stay informed.